We welcome you, our audience, to tonight's program on groundbreaking efforts to understand the causes and scope of domestic violence, especially domestic violence that turns lethal. We will feature efforts to create new paradigms, systems, and tools to intervene in and prevent domestic violence from taking place. Also, we are pleased to highlight some of the many valuable services in the greater St. Louis area that provide shelter, protection, and hope for victims of these violent crimes. Ellen Wentz, Chair of the Women's Voices Raised for Social Justice's Program Committee, will introduce tonight's speakers.
Our 6 esteemed guest speakers tonight include Dr. Jill Messing, a professor in the School of Social Work and director of the Office of Gender-Based Violence at Arizona State. She specializes in the development of testing of intimate partner violence risk assessments as a strategy for reducing intimate partner homicide. Dr. Yesenia Pizarro is a professor of the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice at Arizona State. Her research focuses on the event and factors that result in violence, the processing of violent crime in the criminal justice system, and violence prevention strategies. She has worked with police departments and agencies throughout the country to curb violence. Wilford Pickney Jr. currently serves as the director of the Office of Violence Prevention for the City of St. Louis, which includes direction and oversight of their efforts to create safe and healthy neighborhoods free of violence. He led the development of a crisis management system focused on building healthy and vibrant communities by addressing trauma and increasing access to care. Laura Haffman Morris is a social worker and co-manager of the Lasting Solutions Family Law Program at Legal Services of Eastern Missouri. As part of the family law team, she provides services of domestic violence and sexual assault with support, information, and referrals, as well as court advocacy. She currently sits on the membership board of the Missouri Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, is a board member of the St. Louis Family Violence Council, and Young Friends Board of Legal Services of Eastern Missouri. Emily Stowinski is a community education coordinator at Safe Connections. She also serves as a chair for the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Panel for the City of St. Louis. Emily has spent 5+ years working directly with survivors of domestic and sexual violence and also provides community education. Carla Maley is the Director of Community Engagement at St. Martha's Hall. She has been an advocate for survivors of intimate partner violence for 18 years, including legal advocacy as a director for community-based victim service agencies. She coordinates a social justice project focused on enhancing the court's response to domestic violence. Deanna?
Thank you, Ellen. We encourage you, our audience, to participate with us in this program through the chat feature. If we have time, we will offer a brief spoken Q&A at the end of the program. Now, I will turn it over to the speakers you have been waiting patiently to hear, starting with Dr. Yesenia Pizarro of Arizona State University. Dr. Pizarro.
Thank you, Deanna. And I am just going to share my screen to make sure that you're seeing. Are you all, can you see the screen fine? Yeah. So so today, my colleague, Dr. Jill Messing and Mr. Wilford Pinkney, we are going to be discussing some of the efforts that have been taking place in Missouri and the greater St. Louis area. And without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Dr. Messing so that she could begin our presentation.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Pizarro. We can move on to the next slide. So I'm going to be talking today about the PAIR studies. The PAIR studies is a series, a 6-state series of studies that looks at risk factors for intimate partner homicide. And you can see all of the states here. Today, obviously, we're talking about Missouri. And this is a replication of Dr. Jackie Campbell's, and you can go to the next slide. Dr. Jackie Campbell's case control, foundational case control study of intimate partner homicides that occurred where data collection for this study occurred in the late 1990s. And so what Dr. Campbell did, and she's on our research team and is one of my mentors. So she developed this, this really amazing study where she looked at intimate partner homicides throughout the United States and compared those to the stories or the risk factors present in intimate partner violence situations. And so she was able to make these comparisons and look at what are those risk factors? What are those things that are present in intimate partner homicides that are not present in the intimate partner violence cases? And she used this to create the danger assessment, which is the foundation for most, if not all, of the risk assessments that we have on intimate partner homicide today. And the reason that she compared those intimate partner homicide cases with intimate partner violence cases is because one of the main risk factors for intimate partner homicide is intimate partner violence. So you can see here that between 70 and 72% of femicides, so femicides are when women are killed, and these are intimate partner femicides. So times when women are killed by their intimate partners. So in 70 to 72% of femicides or attempted femicides, there had been prior intimate partner violence in that relationship. So the purpose and goals of the PAIR studies are first to understand the scope of intimate partner homicide in Missouri and across the other states that we're working in. So we want to understand, what intimate partner homicide looks like. And intimate partner violence related homicide as well. So we're not only interested in cases where one intimate partner kills another intimate partner, but we're interested in those cases where there's an intimate partner violence situation that leads to homicide. So a good example of this is, for example, when an intimate partner kills a new boyfriend or girlfriend of their ex-partner. So we're looking to see if those risk factors hold across different types of homicides. And so we are both replicating and expanding Dr. Campbell's original study. So one way that we're expanding is by increasing or expanding those definitions. But we're also looking at updated risk factors. So as I had mentioned, that original data was collected, in the late 1990s. And at that time, there wasn't even technology facilitated abuse in the same way that we would think about that, or stalking looked very different. We're also looking at, there's been more recent information about strangulation. So we're looking at different, frequencies of strangulation, for example, to see if that tells us a little bit more about risk for intimate partner homicide. We also want to expand through geographic variation. So the original intimate partner femicide study only included folks in urban areas. But we're expanding to rural areas, suburban areas, tribal areas. So what we really want to do is make sure that we understand what the scope of intimate partner homicide looks like across locations, which is why we're gathering data from entire states. We also really want to avoid relational misclassification in these data. So not only are we expanding in terms of gender, so we're looking at relationships for people of all genders, but we're also looking at relationships that are, not a heterosexual relationship. So we're looking at LGBTQ relationships. And then finally, we want to avoid racial misclassification. So a lot of the data that's out there on intimate partner homicides racially misclassifies, for example, Indigenous and Latinx folks. So we really want to be careful to avoid those pitfalls that previous research has fallen into. So in order to do that, we have several data collection pillars. So far in Missouri, we've done a very good job, and Dr. Pizarro is going to talk with you about this, of collecting intimate partner homicide information from case files. So those data sources are things like medical examiners, police departments, prosecutor case files. So we're collecting information from case files to understand that scope of intimate partner homicide. Our next task is to gather information, or to continue gathering information through proxy informant interviews. So that means that we're interviewing people who lost a loved one to intimate partner homicide or intimate partner violence related homicide. And keep listening because we have an ask for you later about this. So what we're doing is we're doing interviews with proxy informants to ask them, or to loved ones, next of kin loved ones of intimate partner homicide victims, in order to ask them about the risk factors that were present in the relationship prior to that homicide. And then finally, we're going to interview intimate partner violence survivors. So similar to that original, this is the replication part, right? Similar to that original case control study, these intimate partner violence survivor interviews will ask the same questions as we ask to those next of kin of the intimate partner homicides. And then we'll have a better sense of what are those risk factors that are present in the intimate partner homicides that are not present in the intimate partner violence relationships. And for Missouri specifically, we think this is really important because we'll be able to gather that information specifically for your state and transmit that back so that practitioners and other folks who are working in the state can understand what those risk factors are and what they should be looking for in terms of in terms of risk factors, very specific to Missouri. So I will turn it over to Dr. Pizarro now to talk about some of our preliminary findings from Missouri.
Thank you, Dr. Messing. So I am just going to be giving you an overview of what we've been finding in Missouri with both intimate partner homicides and also domestic violence in general. So to date, we have been able to collect data from 57 police departments across the state. And we currently have data requests or data collection in some form pending in 15 police departments. Of those 15 police departments, we are waiting for the Kansas Police Department. That one's still, we're getting the data slowly there, and the Springfield Police Department. But fortunately, we have been able to get data from the St. Louis City Police Department and the St. Louis County Police Department. Of those 57 police departments, we have been able to gather 198 homicides that fit our definitions. And of those, 128 are intimate partner homicides and 70 are intimate partner violence related. And these are, when you look at the majority of those intimate partner homicide related, they tend to unfortunately involve children of the domestic violence victim, and the second most common would be the a new boyfriend or a new partner. Preliminary findings. So to many, this will be no surprise. 75% of all of our IPHs and IPVRs are committed with a firearm. The victims are more likely to be female, while the perpetrators are more likely to be male. 23% of those 198 cases involve multiple victims, so they're multi-side, where the perpetrator often engages in the killing of their intimate partner, and the multiple victims often tend to be the children of the domestic violence victims, and 5% of them have resulted in a homicide suicide where the perpetrator commits later then kills themselves. In terms of race, we pretty much see an even split between white and African American. We are currently doing some analysis of the data to disentangle individuals of Latinx origin, immigrant born, and Native Americans, but those data are still being cleaned. And then in terms of the ages, the average age of the victims are 37, and the average age of the perpetrators are 39 years old. In addition to what we have been doing with intimate partner homicide, we have also offered technical assistance to St. Louis City and did a preliminary analysis where we were looking at intimate partner violence. And one of the things that we found in those preliminary analysis of just looking at intimate partner violence was that domestic violence seemed to be increasing, and it started a steady increase in 2015 prior to the COVID pandemic, and that we were seeing an increase in third degree and in fourth degree domestic violence incidents. And we also saw that these incidents were concentrating in specific areas of St. Louis City. As a result, we offered some recommendations to the city, and we're happy that some of these have been taken into account since then. We've asked to do more in-depth analysis of these domestic violence assaults, and also more in-depth analyses of the cases that escalated into intimate partner homicides, which we have those preliminary data and are conducting some of the analysis. We've also wanted to get more information on the reassault cases, and were particularly interested if the violence is escalating during the reassault. And finally, something that we will be doing in the near future will be looking at the prevention services available, particularly in the hotspots in the city of St. Louis. I am going to pass it over now to Mr. Wilford Pinckney, who will talk a little more about the current efforts being done by the Office of Violence Prevention in St. Louis City.
Thank you very much. So the Office of Violence Prevention, just for some knowledge, was established on August 1st of this year. So it is new. It is a new office. So currently, we're in the process of building the administrative infrastructure of the office, but the work has been going on because the work is centered on community-centered approaches to reducing violence. So some of my colleagues who are on the panel now belong to organizations that have been working in these areas of violence prevention and reduction for a long time. So the city is really looking at reimagining public safety. Mayor Jones talks often about putting the public back in public safety. She also has talked a lot about having a city where everyone wins. And what that really means is having an inclusive and equitable city. And so what does that mean? That means taking and providing a holistic investment in communities to address root causes. The Office of Violence Prevention currently contracts with 8 different community organizations and is focused in about 10 different neighborhoods where there have been high rates of violence and years of historical disinvestment to try and build those communities to be more vibrant and to have a more healthy and safe population in those communities. So what does that mean? When I went to Yesenia and her colleagues last year, the pandemic really just exacerbated many problems, and one of them was domestic violence. And we wanted to get an understanding of what any patterns or trends that might have existed. They were gracious enough to do the work, provide that evidence, and then we wound up meeting the mayor and myself with many of the people and organizations in the city that engage in serving and treating victims of domestic violence or people who are in domestic violence crisis. One thing I'll point out with the heat map that Yesenia showed was that really only shows people who actually call 911 or filed an incident report, right? So that doesn't nowhere near tell us the whole story. That's why we really wanted to get together people who are serving people on the ground to have an understanding of what's going on, so that we can hopefully do a better job of collaborating and developing strategies to go out and educate people who are in crisis or people who know someone who may be caught in the cycle of domestic violence, but also to think about how we can better do preventive strategies so that we're not just serving people after they've had to file a report or been the victim of some type of violence, but that hopefully we can empower men, women, transgenders, whoever it might be, because we're thinking equitably again, so that they don't have to stay in those types of situations, right? So we really are trying to create a more holistic approach through the collaborations. We also are looking at data-driven approaches. So the reason we asked for that analysis was because we want to know where to point our resources. Everyone has limited resources. Everyone has limited funding. We all need more people. We all need more money. So we want to be smart in how we deploy resources. We have used those data-driven approaches, or we developed data-driven approaches such as our crisis response units and our call diversion programs, where we partner with behavioral health response to go out and meet people where they are when they're in crisis to help stabilize them, and then connect them to organizations such as Legal Services of Eastern Missouri, who's on the call, Safe Connections, who's on this panel right now, and others, so that we can get people to the services they need more quickly. And through that work, we're really working more collaboratively together to more quickly identify people who may have been already working with people and better coordinate referrals. But like I said, we contract with 8 different community organizations around community violence intervention. Laura and Legal Services of Eastern Missouri is one of those organizations, because we want to make sure there are no barriers to people getting the help they need. And then there is a intimate partner violence, domestic violence working group that is going on right now, that's being led by the Center for Police and Equity, to really sort of, once again, develop collaboration and gather more information so that we can be smarter in our approaches to trying to address domestic violence. So there are many different streams, there are many nuances to it. This problem, as there are many, but the city, in collaborations with all these partners, is really doing its best to develop strategies so that we can make a dent in it. So I will now pass it on to Dr. Messon. Come out? Yeah, Dr. Messon, yeah. So.
Yep. Thank you so much. So I just want to talk briefly about the next steps for the PAIR studies. So our next steps are to gather information from those proxy informant interviews, or from loved ones who have lost someone to an intimate partner homicide. And so that person would have lost the people that we are looking to talk to have lost a loved one to intimate partner homicide or intimate partner violence related homicide between 2016 and 2020 in one of our 6 study states, which includes Missouri. So these interviews last about an hour and a half. They are trauma informed. And the items include things like validated risk assessment items, also other items that we've developed based on our team expertise. And we do have supplements to ask questions of folks who are specific populations. So we're interested, for example, in asking some specific questions to the loved ones of people who have lost an immigrant loved one to homicide. So someone who's foreign born, or someone who's transgender, for example. We spent a long time creating the interviews. So we did content validation with 64 experts and cognitive interviews with folks prior. So just to try to understand how that interview was for people prior to actually interviewing folks who lost a loved one to intimate partner homicide. So we've done a lot of work on development of that interview instrument. And so now we are ready to interview loved ones. And if you want to show the next slide, Jesse, we're ready to interview loved ones of people who have lost a loved one to intimate partner homicide. So we would be really appreciative if you'd like to learn more about the study, if you have lost someone to intimate partner homicide, or if you know someone who has lost someone to intimate partner homicide, or if you're an advocate or in law enforcement and would like to learn more about how you can help us connect with folks, or if you're just a community member and would like to learn more about how you can help us connect with folks who might want to participate in this confidential, voluntary, and trauma-informed interview, please do reach out. You can reach us via email at pairstudies@asu.edu. You can give us a call. We do have research assistants who answer the phone Monday through Friday from 11 to 6:30 Missouri time. So you can give us a call and they can talk to you about the research study, or you can use the QR code here. And if you use the QR code, all you're going to need to do is provide your name and just a little bit of information about yourself, like how to get in touch with you. And we will give you a call or send you an email so that you can learn more. And I'll put this information also in the chat. But we, really appreciate anybody who would like to reach out to us, whether it's somebody who's lost a loved one to homicide, or whether you just want to know how you can help, how you can get involved.
Thank you, Dr. Messing and Mr. Pinckney. And now I'm going to pass it over to our next presenters. Laura, I'm passing it over to you now.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen as well. I think we're good. Well, thank you, Dr. Messing, Dr. Pizarro, and Will Pinckney for that powerful information and for bringing your study to St. Louis. Also, thank you to Deanna Stevenson and Women's Voices Raised for creating this forum tonight. My heart is uplifted to see nearly 70 people gather on a Thursday evening to discuss the real issue of domestic violence in our St. Louis community and to talk about the ways that we can address and stop it together. My name is Laura Haffman Morris. I'm a social worker with the Family Law Unit at Legal Services of Eastern Missouri. As a St. Louisan, I know a strength of our community is the care and compassion that we share for our neighbors in need. Yet one topic that goes so largely undiscussed, that touches nearly every person directly or indirectly, is that of intimate partner violence. Witnessing or experiencing this physical, emotional, or sexual harm, particularly from an intimate partner or a parent, truly rocks the core of what we all want, right? A safe and stable home to go to. It's hard to talk about this. It leaves us raw. It's hard to know what to do and how to help, which is why we're so grateful that you're here with us tonight to talk more. So tonight we want to share a brief snapshot of the rich network of service providers. And I see some of our sisters on the call as well. So thank you for being here with us. Carla, Emily, and I are going to talk about our three agencies in particular, and we hope to leave you with some ideas of how to help. In particular, our three organizations are a part of the St. Louis Ending Domestic and Sexual Violence Network, or SLEDSVN. And we've been lucky to have folks from Women's Voices Raised a part of SLEDSVN for the last couple of years. We pulled together domestic violence and sexual violence service providers to network, to share resources, to provide education, and to support one another in this work. And we invite you to our website, sledsvn.org, to see many of our other partner organizations, as well as resources that are available to survivors. We also welcome new members all the time and would love to have more of you at the table. Some of our partner agencies are addressing things like housing and shelter resources, counseling, court advocacy, financial support, hotline support, and so on. These organizations are helping to bolster survivors and provide resources before, during, and after separation from a partner using harm. And we aim to offer information, tangible resources, and a space for that survivor to be believed. I also want to highlight that in addition to SLEDSVN, we and many other DV organizations are working with several other groups. So there's the family violence councils in our area, which are connecting to court systems and law enforcement in each specific county. There's also other initiatives like Will was mentioning with the CVI group that are hoping to connect new partners together and kind of expanding the way that we're serving survivors. But most importantly, we cannot do this work alone. To create any kind of meaningful change, we need all of you to join in shining a light on domestic violence in our community. So thank you again for being here. Now I'd love to pass it over to Emily to tell us more about Safe Connections.
Thank you so much. So like Laura said, my name is Emily Stewinski. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Community Education Coordinator at Safe Connections. So we are a nonprofit here in the St. Louis area, providing support to survivors of relationship, domestic, and sexual violence. We provide that support through a variety of different ways, whether that is education and prevention, crisis intervention, counseling, and support services, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment. A couple of quick things just to know overall about our services is that all of our services are free. So we do not require folks to have insurance. We don't require folks to pay for services. We don't require that folks have to call one place and then call another place to get connected to us. Folks can just contact us directly and get connected to support. We also like to let folks know that we support survivors of all genders. So that includes men and boys, as well as folks that are transgender or gender non-binary. Additionally, we serve individuals that are going to be ages 12 and up. So because we do serve adolescents, we say roughly we will serve folks starting at age 12. If there's a case where maybe you have someone that's close to that age, but maybe is a little under that, feel free to still reach out to us because we'd love to chat more about how we can connect them to support, even if it's not our organization. I'm going to go ahead and click one more time, Laura. And we also want to let folks know that we do serve folks that speak or use other languages. So we do have access to interpretation services. So maybe there's a survivor that speaks Spanish or uses American Sign Language. We like to let folks know that we welcome and want to be of support, and they can absolutely contact us because we do have those abilities to use translation services. Okay, go ahead and the next one. So just a brief overview of our services. So we started in the 70s as a crisis helpline, basically community members that said there's a need for survivors to be connected to support. And so here we are in 2022, continuing that with our crisis helpline, which is staffed 24/7. Folks can call us or text us. That some of those supports could look like a survivor reaching out saying, you know, I have been assaulted. I don't know what to do next. Can you tell me a little bit more about what my options are? We also field calls from not only service providers, but also loved ones. So we may have a friend or a family member reach out and say, you know, I have been noticing for a few years that something just doesn't seem right with my loved one, and I need to know how to start that conversation. What can I do to help support that person? So we do field calls like that all the time. Kind of moving on. So we have different services as it relates to clinical support. So we have our support services, which is essentially our intake department. They do such amazing work assessing folks for our services, as well as providing support until they can get connected to individual therapy. So we have individual therapists as well as group therapists that provide that to both adolescents and adults. Again, I'm going to say it because it's so important to let folks know, completely free services. Lastly, rounding out our services, we have our incredible prevention education and prevention educators, and they are doing just incredible work in schools as well as other youth serving sites, providing information on healthy relationships, on consent. We really believe at Safe Connections that part of moving towards a community of safety is starting with kiddos and young folks and talking about what does healthy relationships actually look like, you know, how to ask for consent, what are boundaries, how to set boundaries. So we're starting those conversations with that group, as well as we do provide education on college campuses with other nonprofits and for-profit businesses. So we are here in the community with the hope that through direct work as well as through outreach that we're really able to serve our community. Go ahead to the next one. So just, you probably saw it on the bottom of all of the slides, but that right there is our crisis helpline number, again, that folks can call or text 24/7. And that is as well our email that folks can email us if that's an easier way to reach out. And I will go ahead and pass it back on over to Laura.
And Carla, can you tell us a little bit about St. Martha's now?
Yes, St. Martha's Hall is one of the longest serving shelters here in the St. Louis region. Again, my name is Carla Maley. I'm the Director of Community Engagement. And I want to take a moment too to also thank St. Louis City Mayor's Office and the Office of Violence Prevention taking a look at this topic in a new, fresh way and really digging into it is incredibly important. I just want to thank them for that. Next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about St. Martha's Hall. We are one of the 9 federated agencies of Catholic Charities. We started providing services over 40 years ago. We serve women and children impacted by domestic violence by providing shelter and other resources, and recently expanded those resources outside of shelter services. To accomplish this, we do provide a confidential safe space for abused women and their children. At any one time, we can provide up to beds up to 9 adults, 15 children. So it's not very much given the demand for emergency shelter at times in our city. The shelter is, I would say, full probably the majority of the time. We provide a supportive environment and work towards providing ongoing supportive services, not just that immediate crisis, but providing those roots and links that are going to sustain that individual. We implement a self-help philosophy to enhance self-esteem. And again, just like Emily said, our services are free, confidential. We also provide advocacy services at the shelter and our new drop-in center. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit on our next slide. Our shelter does have a 24-hour crisis line for anyone who is needing to contact and try to get into shelter. The drop-in center is available for in-person services. No appointment is necessary. And then we also provide ongoing follow-up support, not just with the drop-in services and those coming to the drop-in, but also ongoing follow-up support with the residents who ultimately leave the shelter. And then provide a lot of community education, as well as what all the other safe connections and legal services we are constantly trying to do is increase public awareness around domestic violence. And I know it was said earlier, but one of the projects of not only St. Martha's Hall, but of all of the support of the member agencies of Sludsvin, we have been doing a court watch project to improve the court's responses to domestic violence. And that's been an ongoing project. And we're so glad to see so many great changes come about from that project and to build partnerships with the family courts. Next slide, please, Laura. So we work as part of a community effort. And I would say Emily and Laura would attest to how often our 3 agencies are constantly working together. And it certainly does take a village when it comes to this in a community approach. Our services are provided regardless of race, religion, residency, ancestry, or handicap. But the residents must be at least 18 years of age or a qualified minor between the ages of 16 and 17. The shelter is obviously open 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day, and is in a confidential location. But then recently with the pandemic and with an understanding of how full the shelters are and that some victims aren't wanting to go into shelter, a lot of victims aren't wanting to go into shelter, obviously, where the shelters are full. We expanded services to include this drop-in. This drop-in model is one that has been in existence in St. Louis for quite some time, but we opened in an area of St. Louis County and region that did not have any current domestic violence services. So we kind of laid out a map. We saw St. Louis South County area as an opportunity because one of our sister agencies was working in an area that we were looking at in North County. So we opened this drop-in center on the campus of Assumption Catholic Church. The location is not confidential and we don't want it to be that way. We want people to easily access our services. If you're familiar at all with how a lot of the services work in St. Louis, a lot of times people have to access through a phone line first before they're able to get in. People can just walk in. Our hours are Monday through Friday, 10 to 5, 10 to 4 are walk-in hours so that they can meet with an advocate. And we see a whole continuum of individuals who come in going, I don't know if I need to be here because I've never been hit, all the way to my bags are packed, help me get safe. So we have no wait lists. We have no requirements for services. We provide services to individuals impacted by domestic violence. We have no paperwork. So when someone comes in, they immediately are talking with an advocate. We aren't screening to see, we screen for safety, but we do not, or immediate safety concerns, but we don't screen and make someone who's been in crisis or in trauma fill out paperwork. And our focus is truly to reduce barriers to safety and support. And we start where they are at in their process. We provide a lot of transportation assistance, emergency financial assistance, and really recognize that the key to someone to coming out of that cycle of violence and maintaining a healthy life free of abuse is to maintain that ongoing supportive services. And we really focus on that. Next slide. This is a picture, I believe, of our new drop-in center that we're very, very proud of. It actually is just north of the campus. So the campus oftentimes plays a great safety cover for us in case someone is concerned about, the being tracked, that they're able to use that as a cover. But our advocates are available to provide in-person support to all individuals impacted by domestic violence through support, crisis intervention, legal advocacy. We assist in navigating different systems. We have laptops available for folks to attend hearings, apply for jobs, apply for childcare assistance, safety planning. We even have laundry facilities on property so that when folks are there, if they're staying in a hotel or in a motel for emergency shelter, that they can come do their laundry while they're making phone calls. We also provide education and ongoing support to family and friends, because oftentimes they're the first ones to reach out. And so we look at them as a conduit to safety. And so we will work with those individuals ongoing, educate them about the barriers, the domestic violence dynamics, and then again, more workshops to the community. And this is the inside of our facility. I just wanted to throw some pictures because oftentimes it's hard to see what our places look like. And we wanted something that was not clinical, that felt like a warm hug. And I know Laura and Emily have both been there, and it does when you walk in. It's not a bad place to come to work every day. So, and there's our information and contact information for both our shelter and our drop-in center, and contact information for myself and the number to the drop-in center.
Thanks, Carla. I love the description of a warm hug. It really does feel like that inside. Up next, I'm just going to share a little bit about my organization, Legal Services of Eastern Missouri. We have been a part of the community for 66 years and offer free civil legal representation for low-income folks. Our mission is to advance justice through legal representation, education, and supportive services. And we intend to partner with the community. We see ourselves as a law firm, but one that is embedded in the community and part of this larger framework of other social service agencies. Our main office is in St. Louis City in Midtown, but we cover 21 counties in Missouri. We go up to the Iowa border, down to Washington County, and we do have a couple outreach offices in Hannibal and Union that do a lot of the heavy lifting for the rural counties in our area. And we're very fortunate to have a wide range of civil legal assistance that we can offer. So everything from housing law to consumer education. We do a lot of public benefits work and helping connect folks to healthcare and health insurance. We even do work in growing neighborhoods and addressing vacant properties. I mention all of these because so often survivors are not just coming to us for help in our family law department, but have a wide array of needs. And legal services is able to help kind of put those puzzle pieces together of what can we address while they, when they come through our doors. My department is the Lasting Solutions Family Law Unit, and we are offering free legal representation for survivors of domestic and sexual violence. Our attorneys are representing folks in divorce cases, in custody cases, paternity matters, and orders of protection. And this is so important. Research has shown that survivors who have access to an attorney and help in these family law matters truly have tangible ways to separate from an abusive partner, right? In a court case, sometimes a survivor can, have a parenting plan that it's agreed upon who has the kids when. So that doesn't have to be a discussion with a former abusive partner, right? We can ask for child support or maintenance to be awarded so that a survivor can get back on their feet financially while they're trying to support their family. On our family law team, we also take an interdisciplinary approach. We have social workers like myself on staff, recognizing that particularly for survivors of domestic violence, but across our agency, helping address a legal issue is very important. It's the primary reason why folks are coming to us. But often there's many things that led up to why somebody needs that legal assistance, right? And so some of our social workers can kind of address some of those larger issues that are going on in a family, connect to financial resources, to other resources in the community. In our unit, we're doing a lot of safety planning, a lot of talking through the process, recognizing that the legal system is not always trauma informed, right? That going to an order of protection case, for example, is incredibly intimidating. We are asking a survivor to go tell a judge, a complete stranger, why this person that they loved, can no longer be around them, should have limited time with their children. It's incredibly difficult, right, to be in that position and have to share some of these things that perhaps it's been difficult to talk about with anyone else before. So in our approach, we just try to help survivors in their journey and using the legal system as a tool in the midst of that. Like Emily and Carla mentioned, we also are trying to address barriers, right? I think our the movement of addressing domestic violence is intentionally trying to be more inclusive, and we are doing that as well. We have free interpretation services for anyone who needs that. We can offer representation to folks of all genders, all sexual orientations, all races and nationalities. We're really fortunate that we don't have to worry about legal status at all. If somebody has experienced violence, legal aids across the country recognize that those folks need representation just like anyone else, of course. Like Emily and Carla mentioned, we love doing community education as well. We love doing trainings on domestic violence and family law, right? Recognizing that nobody knows how to navigate the order of protection system or what's possible in a divorce case unless you have to, unless you're kind of forced into going through those court systems. So often by doing trainings on family law, we love being able to share information with survivors and with other providers, recognizing that Carla, at a Wyman shelter is going to be that gatekeeper. Like, somebody talks about, I don't know what my options are with this, with my kiddo. And we know that, our partner agencies are the people who are really connecting those folks to us, saying, what, there's some options out there and we want to connect you with that person. We want to talk about options. What might be possible. I gotta stop looking at the chat. I can't multitask. So we talk a lot at Legal Services about partnership, about being a part of the community, recognizing that a survivor so frequently needs all of us to move forward. And so we try to tailor services to just meet those needs that somebody's presenting with, right? Whether it be we can address some family law issues, we can connect somebody for counseling resources, we can talk about public benefit options and get that family connected to food stamps so they have some support. We can, even connect to, our criminal justice system if somebody is taking that route. But recognizing that every family, every survivor presents with a different set of needs and goals for moving forward. And so it's really important to us to make sure that we are partnering with many different folks in the community so that we can meet those goals and meet that client where they're at. We encourage you to reach out to us, client, if you have somebody who could really benefit from Lasting Solutions or our many other programs. People can call us directly at that main number, 534-4200. You can also go to our website to learn more about our programs or to start our intake process. Sometimes that's a little bit easier for folks to kind of start sharing some information and then we'll reach out directly to them. Now, in addition to our work, we do want to leave you before we switch to questions about just ways to help, right? We hope that after hearing the great work of the pair studies, of the city, of some of the DV service providers here, that you were moved to also join with us in this movement. And so we have some ideas for you.
So it seems simple, and people reading this on the screen may go, well, that makes sense. You know, why wouldn't we believe and support survivors? But I promise you that simple act, telling somebody, I believe you, how can I support you? It's not okay that this has happened. This is not your fault, is so impactful. And that's something that's simple, just by listening to your loved ones and believing that if they disclose abuse or violence.
You can also participate in Domestic Violence Awareness Month. October is a time that we try to be more open in talking about domestic violence. And if you go to slutsman.org, you can link to the DV Awareness Month website that has it has a calendar of events that are going on for the next 2 weeks. Two in particular that I want to point out: next Thursday is Wear Purple Day, and we just encourage you to wear purple in your workplaces with your families, and talk more about this. Talk about this program. Talk about one thing that you were surprised by. There is also going to be a rally walk in the Grove on the 22nd. That's Saturday, October 22nd. Diamond Divas is sponsoring that rally walk, as a lot of our organizations are going to be there, and just want to lift that up. And I can speak to last year was such a powerful event of survivors of the community coming together. So I just encourage you, if you have any interest, come out to the Grove on the 22nd. And then the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence has a lot of information about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. They're using the We Are Resilient hashtag, and just encourage you to look at some of their materials as well.
I think an additional thing is, educating ourselves and dispelling the myths around domestic violence so that we can do that when we hear things come up. But as you saw in the chat, someone asked about volunteer opportunities, and another way of how you can help is getting connected with a local domestic violence organization. And there's some great organizations out there, but hosting a drive for needed donations, contacting that organization and finding out what are your most needed items, donating money, obviously, volunteering at events, volunteering to write thank you cards or help in any way. And then also there's a relatively new event that's going on. It's called it's Love to Eat, Eat to Love. And many other businesses are also getting involved with participating in these DV awareness events. This particular one includes, I believe, we're over 25 restaurants in the St. Louis region who all month long is giving to an organization of their choice, a domestic violence organization of their choice, I believe 10% of their proceeds. So it's a great campaign to help support local domestic violence organizations. And that was just one woman's idea to get this started. And it really, it's amazing what they're doing.
So again, thank you for listening to us tonight, and just for being interested in this with us. And I'll turn it over to Ellen, I think, to open it up for some questions.
Thank you very, very much. I learned so much tonight. And it does my heart feel so good to know that there's so many safety nets out there. Questions, okay. We'd love to hear panelists speak to the safety planning looks that when parents are looking to reunify with their children after they've been removed from custody due to intimate partner violence. Would someone like to speak on that? Everyone at once?
I'll jump in, and I'm hoping my colleagues will as well. It's a long process. I think anytime the children's division is involved, and Obviously, so they're protecting the children, but it's a long process for a mother or non-offending parent to get the children back. But if the as far as timeline, I think that depends on that individual situation and what's on their case plan. But it's certainly something that an individual could reach out to an organization, a non-offending parent could reach out to one of our organizations to help for us to support, as well as help them sort of navigate kind of, what do I do here? What do I do there? And for a lot of times those case plans involve a lot of details of having to find stable housing, find full-time employment, find childcare. And that takes a lot of steps and that takes time. So that process is different for each person.
Thank you. I think this is for Dr. Messing. How can one interview an intimate partner homicide survivor? But I think maybe that was misunderstood because you interviewed the loved ones of homicide survivors. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. So, so we're actually looking to recruit what we call proxy informants. So these are people who knew the intimate partner homicide victim well, right? So somebody who maybe their mother or their sister or their best friend. And so we're looking to talk to loved ones of intimate partner homicide or domestic homicide victims, so that we can talk to them about the relationship of their loved one prior to that homicide.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that. This one is for Wilford. You may not know an answer for this, but do you think the news media is starting to see results of the new violence prevention program?
I don't know that I would ever try to speak for the news media. I think a lot of that is subjective.
Yes.
I also think it's tough, right, to get into what's working and what's not. There are things that you plant seeds for now that take a little while to germinate. I think in terms of looking at a lot of the work we're doing around crisis response, those are things you don't see every day, that people are out there working hard and engaging people in crisis. So, I mean, when you set out to do this type of work, you really don't or should not be looking for people to be judging it on a month-to-month basis or 6 months basis. You have to do the work and the results will show. But I can tell you there are people in community that know all of the people on this call, the work that they do, that know our crisis response units, that wear purple shirts. They know them as the purple shirts out there, that know BHR, I think, that are more informed to call a crisis line or talk to someone in their family or a friend or a coworker to get them help. So, I mean, me personally, I don't look for other people to validate the work of myself or the people we work with. We just keep working hard every day, because whether someone thinks it's successful or not is not going to stop what we do every day.
Thank you. The next question, is there a typical environment in which domestic violence is more likely to take place? Anyone want to take a stab on that one?
Yeah, so I can speak a little bit. Something that's so important to know about intimate partner violence is that it can happen to anyone in any situation. So we can say that there may be certain factors where violence could be more prone to happening. Some things such as if somebody is in poverty, if there is substance use that's happening. But what's important to know is that those things could not be present and violence could still be occurring. Domestic and sexual violence is something that transcends all demographics, all genders, and all ethnicities and economic backgrounds.
Thank you. I think Dr. Messing sent a link to answer this one, but maybe you want to talk about it. There was a question about, is there data on the incidence of domestic violence available for St. Louis County? And if so, do you know which departments hold that data?
So we were able to work with Will Pindy's office to gather information from the St. Louis Metro PD. I'm not sure if there's like publicly available data on that, but you can. I'll stick it back in the chat again. But you can take a look at the report that we created for the mayor's office, which is online, and that will give you some additional information on domestic violence incident reports in the city of St. Louis.
So that's just the city. So nobody knows about St. Louis County.
Well, so there, to our knowledge, that the data for St. Louis County is not publicly available outside of what you get from the Highway Patrol and State Police reports that are published annually in their websites. So we were fortunate enough to get data from the county.
Okay.
But those were done through agreements with the medical examiner's office, as well as some public records requests with the county police departments.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Many of you said, you all said your services are free. Does anyone want to talk about where you get your funding? I know donations are some, but does anybody want to discuss that? Or
I can say for our family law unit, we, of course, donations are some, but we have a lot of federal and state grants that also support the work we do. So like the Legal Assistance to Victims grant is through the federal government, but also a lot of money coming through the state of Missouri, through VOCA funds, through VAWA funds, and so on. I think
that's great.
And VOCA is Victim of Crime Act, right?
Okay, I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will say too, Missouri has recently received or started dispersing, I should say, ARPA funds for victims of domestic violence. So those funding sources are coming through the state of Missouri and were distributed to a lot of our partner organizations as well.
That is great to hear.
Yes.
Let's see. And this is for Carla. I know it was answered in the chat, but I don't know if everybody saw that. For St. Martha's Hall, what happens if there's no room at St. Martha's Hall? How do you provide safety at the facility and an assumption if someone is being followed or stalked?
And I believe that I did answer that in the chat there, but as far as, you know, the drop-in center, we take safety protocols incredibly serious. Our safety protocols are probably reviewed more times than most, just because our name is attached to the shelter, which is in a confidential location. So if someone is looking for someone that they believe may be in our shelter, our address pops up. So it is, we do have a security system. And as I put in there, we've had consults with the St. Louis County Tactical Unit to come in and just ensure that everything that we have set up is will protect not only the staff, but the women and children that we serve. As far as the shelter system in St. Louis, I think you heard me say the shelters are full most nights, and that is unfortunate. And so often we have to get creative. We have to start looking outside the region until a bed becomes available inside the St. Louis region. So we look at Illinois and the surrounding counties. And when all else fails, we do have a backup system in St. Louis through the Nights of Safety program, through Alive.
Okay, thank you. And someone asked, does St. Martha's utilize volunteers? I think you may have answered that, but anyone can volunteer there. Someone watching. Okay, great. That is, oh, I missed the chat. Let's see what else. Do the courts still restrict the children from returning if the mother is in the shelter, or have they been better about lifting those restrictions?
And I would say, you know, over the past several years, we've done a lot of education with those systems, and not just the children's division, but with the family court systems. We've done a lot of education, and we've seen we've seen improvements, and we've seen judges become more educated around this topic. So we are seeing changes. You know, no system is perfect and every case is different and there's multiple layers. So yeah.
Well, that's in the right direction. This question is for Mr. Pickney about getting to the root of the cause of domestic violence. What specifically is being done to address these issues? And are there programs for perpetrators? Raven used to be an organization that did this work, but I don't know if it still exists, is the question.
So I don't know about Raven. I don't know, one of my colleagues may be able to answer that, but I will say a lot is being done to address root causes, and you can't really talk about addressing root causes without thinking about people who are doing harm. Now, let me say up front, that doesn't mean that someone wouldn't be arrested or accountability still exists for them, but you know, they may not stay in jail forever, and we don't want them to come out and re-engage in that behavior that got them in that place in the first place. So there are organizations that do focus on the people who do harm as well as those who are victims. That's happened separately, so let me say that. It's not like it happens together. There are some restorative justice approaches where if both people consent, there may be something that happens collaboratively. But in terms of the victim, addressing root causes, which oftentimes have to do with lack of employment, the financial dependency that exists there. Maybe there might be some trauma help that is needed. Maybe it's housing. All of those things, not only does the city fund strategies for those things, regardless of whether you're a domestic violence victim or not, but everyone on the call, I think, talked about how they are providing these services to survivors as they engage them. So we're constantly looking at what are those root causes. That's what a little bit what the PAIR study is about. That's what looking at intimate partner violence is about. That's what the working group is talking about. And Slevin, I think, hopefully I'm saying it right. I'm sure Slevin engages in that all the time in terms of how can we better ensure that people, once again, don't fall into or feel trapped in that cycle of violence. So there's a lot of ways in which we fund root causes through just going back to what I said about having a city where everyone wins, and putting that public and back in public safety, engaging the community, talking with survivors, talking with families of survivors, and understanding what caused them to fall into that cycle.
Great. And Mr. Pickney, one more question. What is your relationship with clergy and the faith-based community?
So, we engage all partners. So, there's no one that we won't reach out to, engage with. I have relationships with some clergy groups. And so we're going to go wherever to, number one, try and engage our victims, survivors, family members to understand where we need to target our resources, where we might be having gaps, where people aren't being served or don't have access to information. Clergy and faith-based groups are always important when you're looking for a space to gather, to educate people. And so we utilize our faith-based partners in many ways.
Great. We have an evaluation form in the chat. We'd love people to fill that out. And this is the end of all of our questions. So thank everyone. You've done a wonderful job. I've learned so much. And Deanna, thanks for putting this together. And thank you all presenters. I know you put a lot of time into this, but thank you very, very much.